So it was the poet Maya Angelou who said something more or less like this: if you want to understand where you're going, you need to look at your past. And it's in this vein that today we're going to talk about early childhood development, so that we can go back to the past and see what type of influences you might have had that made you into who you are today, so you can easily navigate going towards the person that you want to be. Hi, my name's Kaufman from the Marriage Recovery Center. My job is to help you learn to help yourself. And if we're lucky, we'll get to work together one day. So on the topic of early childhood development, the first thing that I want to point out is that most people start out thinking that they get to decide who they want to be. That they think they chose their personality and decided exactly the way that they wanted to operate in the world, when in fact that's generally not the case. And there are a few factors that factor into this. The first is where in the world. So where in the world means that you, watching this video, are probably part of the 12% of the world that's weird. Weird's an acronym for Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. Remember, 12%. Your perspective and your framework on the world and things like economy and food culture and cars and belief systems are the minority in the world. And so questioning, what would your life be like if you were born in the Amazon basin or in sub-Saharan Africa? You likely would be a very different version of yourself based on the belief systems that surround you where you're raised. And the second topic is in utero development, the 9 months that you're in your mom's belly. A lot of people think that this is a quiet, safe, secure, and sequestered place. However, you're actually interacting with the outside world in a lot of ways that most people don't typically think about. Some of your food preferences and smell preferences and the way that you can understand your mom's voice, these are all forming inside the womb during your gestation period. But beyond that, you're learning about the outside world through things like cortisol levels and abundance of food or not. Meaning if your mom is starving or overeating, you're going to get that through the placenta and through your food source, and you're going to understand that the outside world is abundant or the outside world is a world of scarcity. Or if your mom happens to be in an abusive relationship or anxious all of the time, your cortisol levels are going to be high, and that's going to affect your internal organ development. So you're literally going to prepare for a world that you're perceiving through your mom that may in fact be nothing at all like that. A couple of stories on this same topic are important to point out. The first is 9/11. Around the Ground Zero attack, there were 1,400 women studied who were pregnant at the time, and the babies that were born after the attack presented much more highly with the PTSD gene presented than anyone else in the general population, meaning they were anticipating a world that was scary and dangerous and had the potential for attacks, even though when they arrived, that wasn't the case. And then there was the Hunger Winter in Holland in 1944. There were 40,000 women who were pregnant at the time. The country was gripped in a famine. The Nazi occupation was taking hold. And that country didn't exactly know where they were going to get their next meal. So the babies were starving from the inside out. Those babies, thinking that the outside world was scary and one of scarcity, ended up developing a host of biological problems that they ended up having to deal with later in life. And that 40,000 cohort was studied, and we watched how their biological problems presented over their life expectancy. And then the last thing that we'll talk about is early childhood trauma. I think that early childhood trauma may play a bigger role in most of our lives than we give it credit for. And early childhood trauma could be described as things like divorce, or having somebody in your household abuse drugs, or neglect, or physical or verbal abuse. Now, if you look at trauma in general, I'd say that most people have at least some amount of trauma in their life. But for the cohort, the people that had the most trauma in their life, those people are 3 times more likely to have heart disease, and they have a 20-year shorter life expectancy. The reason that I tell you some of these things is really so that you can just be understanding and compassionate. Understanding of the loved ones that you have who maybe had a rough childhood. Maybe they grew up in a place that was a little different and a little bit more hardcore than where you grew up. Or maybe they had trauma in their family of origin, and it's something that they're still trying to work their way through. And your work is to be open and understanding and compassionate. Now, this is not the same thing as accepting bad behavior. Bad behavior is bad behavior, which means that if you're subject to it, you should hold your ground, set some healthy boundaries, and if you need to, get yourself out of there. But other than that, try to be accepting, try to be understanding that we all come from places that we're trying to come and grow beyond. And the more that you can be aware of this, and the more that you can ask the question, why? Why do I believe that? Why do I feel this way? That why question will be the origin of how you begin to go from where you are now all the way out to where you want to be one day. I hope you can take that information, integrate it into your day from time to time, love on the people that you see who are struggling, and be a little bit more understanding with yourself as well. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you soon.